taking him by hand. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, yeah. La, 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 life goes on. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, yeah. La, 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 life goes on. Desmond takes a trolley to a jewelry store, buys a 20-karat golden ring, takes it back to Molly waiting at the door, and as he gives it to her, she begins to sing. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, yeah. La, 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 life goes on. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, ooh, yeah.
Recording in progress.
La, la, life goes on. In a couple of years, they have built their home, sweet home. With a couple of kids running in the yard of Desmond and Molly Jones. Happy ever after in the marketplace. Desmond lets the children lend a hand. Molly stays at home and does her pretty face, and in the evening she's still singing with the band. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, yeah. La, 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 life goes on. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, ooh, yeah. La, 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 life goes on. Desmond has a barrow in the marketplace. Molly is a singer in the band. Desmond says to Molly, girl, I like your face. And Molly says his as she's taking him by hand. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, yeah. La, 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 life goes on. Oh, bloody, oh, blada, life goes on, yeah. La, 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 life goes on. La, 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 life goes on. La, 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 life goes on.
Hey everyone, and thanks again for joining us on our Inter-Wellness 8-part series. We are on part 3, Know Your Feelings. My favorite part because you can come out of your shell as a tortoise from the islands. But before we begin, I just really want to thank our sponsors who made this topic possible. So this is sponsored by the Office of Equity and Community Partnerships at King County Public Health. Family Ways, a program supporting pregnant mothers, families from children up to age 5. All their services are culturally relevant, participant-centered, and peer community specialists represent the communities. We're also sponsored by Waves, worthy of achievement, validation, and empowerment and success for Asian and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders at Shoreline Community College. WAVE is a program for domestic Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders students at Shoreline Community College. They focus on removing barriers for domestic AANHPI students who are furthest from educational justice. And then we're also sponsored by Voices of the South Pacific, focusing a lot of our Pacific Islander community needs and improving Pacific Islander outcomes. But with that, I'm going to pause there and pass it off to our amazing therapists, Sala and Scarlett. I was on keen this time and I remembered your names.
You should be fired for that, silly. Fired for forget. I mean, like, I swear we talk like every
Last
day.
week, I just forgot. I was like, what's their names again? What's their names again?
We won't forget it.
It's locked in today.
Anyhow, welcome. Good evening, everyone. So good to be here in this just cold, rainy, gloomy Pacific Northwest day. So good to be here. Thank you for joining us this evening. and having this conversation tonight. I'm excited about this conversation tonight on knowing your feelings. Like I said, Scarlett and I are always excited about these topics and these community conversations because every single time we host these,
Did we lose Sala there?
I think we may have lost Sala. So until I just text her. So until we get reconnected again, good evening, everyone. And so as when Sala gets back on, we'll let her continue her speech if she does. But again, these are some exciting community conversations that Sala and I have, and we're like really honored. And so we want to thank our behind the scenes team, Celie and DJ Una, in regards to allowing and helping us in this space. So Sala, are you good? You want to get back on there? You're muted, Sala.
was it just me that went offline?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know what happened. Everything just like kicked me out of Zoom. But yes, so again, sorry for technical difficulties, but again, so good to be here tonight. Scarlett and I are always excited to kind of host and facilitate these community conversations, especially around these topics. But if you are new here tonight, let me just introduce myself a little bit, and then I'll turn it over to my amazing colleague Scarlett to introduce herself, and then also to share a little bit about the work that she does. So my name is Sala Afalava. I am a licensed mental health therapist here in the state of Washington. I am also a mom to 2 teenagers. I am a wife, and I am also a student, continuing my my studies at Northwest University in their doctorate program. But all of those amazing things, but truly, I think this is like my thing. I really just enjoy being able to be out there with the community and just engaging with the community, like my people. So I really, just thrive in being able to hear feedback from people. And then also just making what we do accessible to our community. So I think for me, that's where my heart is, or that's where my passion is just being able to take our service and what it is that we can do, and being able to share that with our community and be able to help them with understanding whatever it is that they're going through. So anyways, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my amazing colleague Scarlett to introduce herself a little bit if she hasn't already. And then just to kickstart our conversation tonight on knowing your feelings.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's go. Again, so for those who are new, my name is Scarlett Ikaroma. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and boundaries coach. Been in this field for over a decade, and I work through my private practice, Elevate Healing. And just to emphasize this, what Sala has said, we truly enjoy these community conversations. And so in the midst of this, if you have questions you want to share, please interrupt us or put it in the chat. If you're on Facebook, put it in the comments as well. And if I believe it's running on YouTube Live as well. So if you're on there as well, put your comments in there as well. So tonight we're going to be talking about knowing your feelings. And one of the things that when Sal and I were putting this together, we realized like it is hard for our communities to talk about our feelings and what's going on. And so this is just a true soft introduction on it, because we decided to put these classes together because a lot of the information that we give, you don't really get unless you go see someone like us in a therapist office. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get set up. And then Sala, if you could share the event summary in the chat, that'd be great.
Got you. And also, so throughout our community conversations, I think we also have those feedback things, right, Celie? Did Celie go offline?
Yeah, yep. No, I stay muted so we don't get feedback. Sorry, but yes, we do.
Okay. And so look out on the chat for those things, and feel free to download them so you can have them.
Are we good? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So again, tonight's community conversation is about know your feelings. So again, if you have questions, if you want to share, please do so. Because again, if you've been in our classes before, Sal and I can take over very easily by sharing. And part of the reason why we do share, because it's a different experience and a different conversation when you have somebody who looks like you versus someone who doesn't, and it's a different experience that you have when someone knows your culture and can familiarize with what you have gone through as well. I enjoy talking about feelings because, you know, our families don't, you know, we don't do it enough. And so it's a very full conversation because our communities need it. And so, and when we were putting this class together, one of the things that the challenge that we have is everybody who comes in my office, one of the first things I teach them is how to talk about feelings, because they just don't know how to do it. A lot of times, one of the things that I know is the emotional intelligence is actually not really taught after kindergarten. If you're here in the United States, it's not really taught after kindergarten. And so there are so many things we experience past 5 years old that no one really teaches us about, especially when we get to our teenage years where everything is a problem sometimes. And so we wanted to give the education, because even when we work with like our elders and we help them through finding their words and their feelings, it's such a really cool experience that they get to say, oh, that's what it is. You know, so that's part of the reason why we enjoy this class. So tonight's agenda, we're going to talk about the brain and the body, because it's important to know what's going on inside of you when you have feelings going on. And then we're going to talk about all things feelings, culture. One of my favorite slides or things to always talk about in each community conversations, talk about how culture impacts us. And we're going to talk about the importance of sharing your feelings. Then we're going to get into 34,000, the layers of feelings, then some sharing tips, and then we're just going to chat some more. But again, if you have something you want to share, please don't hesitate to comment or raise your hand, and we will definitely get to it. So that being said, we're going to watch our first video. It's about your brain, your body, and feelings. And it's important to know what's going on inside of you when you are feeling whatever those feelings are. And because a lot of times we find it very important to teach our communities about their body, because a lot of times we just don't know what's going on. So this is a really short video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
When we hear the word emotion, most of us think of love, hate, happiness, or fear. Those strong feelings we experience throughout life. Our emotions are the driving force behind many of our behaviors, helpful and unhelpful. Just where do our emotions come from? Our brain is wired to look for threats or rewards. If one is detected, the feeling region of the brain alerts us through the release of chemical messages. Emotions are the effect of these chemical messages traveling from our brain through the body. When our brain detects a potential threat, our brain releases the stress hormones adrenaline and cortisol, which prepare us for a fight or flight response. When we detect or experience something rewarding, such as someone doing something nice for you, our brain releases dopamine, oxytocin, or serotonin. These are the chemicals that make us feel good and motivate us to continue on the task or behavior. In these instances, the feeling region of the brain kicks in before the thinking part. Sometimes the reactions of the feeling brain are so strong that it dominates our behaviors and we're unable to think rationally in the moment. Our emotions hijack our brain. While many of our emotional responses happen subconsciously, our thinking can influence our emotions, and sometimes this can be unhelpful. Just thinking about something threatening can trigger an emotional response. This is where we can manage our emotions with conscious thinking. Our emotions play a powerful role in the way we experience the world. Understanding and regulating our emotions through our thoughts and behaviors can help us take greater control of our brain and achieve our goals.
Any comments, any questions? Sala, if you wanted to add anything.
I think the part that always stands out to me is how, or why I really enjoy this video, because it's something different, right? I know a lot of the times when you and I have this conversation with our community, they never really consider like how much like everything sort of ties in together when it comes to how they feel about things, and their cognitive, their thinking, how they're thinking about things influences how they're feeling about things, and then how that even in turn you know, sort of manifests or comes out in like these external behavioral ways. So like people never really think about that. And so every time we have this conversation and being able to share this with our community and really kind of emphasizing like there's something that's going on in your brain, right? Like, and I always like this video, how it sort of points out that like, you know, our brains are wired in a way where it's like looking out for those rewards or those threats, right? So depending on whatever situation that you're finding yourself in, if it's like a really good situation, someone does something good for you, then it releases like certain, you know, chemicals in your brain that it's like the feel good chemicals, you know, versus when your brain perceives a threat, then it releases something different. But I think just to be able to have that understanding, and to be able to share that, you know, with people, I know that some of the feedback we always get back is like, wow, I didn't even know that was going on. And I think that just comes with like not having sort of like that understanding of how everything is kind of working, the inner workings of our brains.
Well, that's good. And to add on to that, one of the things I always get out of this video is the impact of withholding your feelings, how it manifests in our body. So, for example, one of the things like I've shared in a previous class before, like I know when I hold in my stress, like I feel it on the back of my neck. Or a lot of times when I ask a client, I said, you know, when you're feeling really sad, where you feel it, they'll feel it in their stomach, and because that's where they're holding it. So I think that's the important video is like whatever you're feeling, you actually feel it somewhere in your body when you pay attention to what's going on there. Before I move forward, anybody have any comments, any questions? And again, in the chat, the Zoom chat, Sala has put the summary for our class tonight for you all as well.
I think just kind of pointing out too that like when it comes to our community members, right, our AA NHPI communities.
When we hear the word emotion, most of us think of love, hate, happiness, or fear.
It's like
those strong feelings we experience throughout life. Our emotions are the driving force behind many of our.
Go ahead.
Gotcha. I was saying how with all the technical difficulties tonight is the night for it. So I was saying how with our community members, like research does show that we are a lot more prone to sharing somatic symptoms, right? Or expressing somatic symptoms. So that would look like somebody from, you know, like a Samoan person going to their doctors and they're reporting all of these things that they're feeling in their body, right? And they think that it's like, you know, oh, it's there's something wrong with me because I feel this in my body. So we're more likely to report things that we feel in our body, but we're not more likely to report like feelings, emotions. So, and research shows that it's like, you know, for our Asian American Pacific Islander communities, we're more prone to being able to share our somatic symptoms and what's going on with like our bodies, or report like physical symptoms. But and I think like a lot of that might even have to do because like, well, for one, we don't have the language around that, you know, when it comes to like feelings or emotions. But I remember this from one of the research point that I shared from one of our community conversations, where we not only are underutilizing mental health service, but we're also more in tune with like reporting somatic symptoms than we are expressing like, oh, I'm feeling whatever it is that you're feeling. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and this is when we meet with groups and individuals, we always talk about paying attention to what's going on in our body. And it's just like, because a lot of times when we hold it somewhere, there is something attached to that. So a lot of times what we talk about is how thoughts are attached to a feeling. So it's like, what is it
Mhm.
that's going on? So we always talk about bringing
Yeah. Mhm.
body awareness for sure. Um, Now let's talk about one of my favorite slides, feelings and culture. We always love to talk about how culture impacts everything that we do. Because the one thing that we don't ever want to dismiss is how our culture, especially our Pacifica AANHPI community, our culture is very, very important to us. But it also part of our culture is can impact us negatively as well. So the question that I have for you all tonight is, how are feelings viewed culturally and in your family? And what would happen if you share? Ala, go ahead. I saw you had your hand up. Ala?
Yes, I'm sorry I can't turn on my camera because of the connection. But I have a question going back to what Miss Sala was saying, like we're more to report system, what was the word that she used? Systematic, like symptoms, but not feelings. So how would I, like, okay, say for example, because I really wanted to understand. So how does the conversation, like, if I have something wrong, how, because I'm not gonna come to the doctor's office and say, oh, hey, you know what? I'm like, how would a conversation, or how would I present um something if I'm going through something like a feeling? How would I then approach my doctor or somebody about that? Like, how would I word it?
So one of the things I would, and we'll get into this because it's a part of the tips that we have, is it's very important that I always recommend using the resource of a feelings wheel. We are not taught what our feelings are outside of mad, sad, hungry, lonely, tired. Those are the main ones that we are taught. But there's so much, and we'll get into it in this community conversation as well, Ala, about how you can experience more than one feeling at a time. Me, as who's been in this field for over a decade, I still use the feelings wheel because I need it. I absolutely need it. Because it's very important for me to utilize all the resources that I have, because sometimes we just can't think of how we're feeling in the midst or in the moment. So that's what I would say to that. Solid, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Ala. So the word is somatic, 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 somatic symptoms. And what that word pretty much is, it's anything that has to do with your physical body. So, or relating to your body that's separate from like your mind, right? So that's somatic. So I think like an example that I can think of right now is like, so say for example, you go to the doctor's office, you've been having like, maybe like a lot of stomach issues, right? And you're going to the doctor and say, around this time, like I'm always like, my stomach, it's never settled. Like it's always like, whatever it is. So you're describing whatever you're experiencing in your body to the doctor. Maybe the doctor is going to go and it's going to run all of his exams. He's going to examine and he does his assessment. He's like, we're not showing anything on our test results or whatever that there's anything going on that we can see from our assessments, exams, whatever, right? But I think and that could also, so let's say the doctor examines you and says, everything looks good, Allah, like, there's nothing really that we can see that's an issue or that's a problem. But what that could be that you are describing to your doctor is maybe there is something that's going on that's been, maybe like some event or situation that you're worried about, concerned about, feeling anxious about, throughout that week. And that's just your way. That's just your body's way of sort of experiencing what it is that you're feeling, right? And because you maybe, and I'm not saying that you don't know, but maybe for you, it's like, you know what? I don't even, know the words to really say what I'm feeling inside, because like a lot of our community members is like, well, we're not, like Scarlett said, we're not taught like feelings. Like even just if, for example, in my own Samoan culture, we don't really talk about feelings. We don't really, it's not really something that we talk about. We don't we don't have parents that's going to sit us down and be like, well, sweetie, what you just experienced was frustration, and that's what frustration is, and and be able to talk us through things like that. But so you maybe you don't have the vocabulary to express what it is that you're experiencing emotionally. So now, but all that you understand is the physical symptoms that's coming up for you. And this is what you're like, I don't know, like my stomach keeps hurting every time, I go to work, and it's a new job, and that could be a symptom of anxiety. Maybe that's, you're anxious about something, it's a new job that you're going to, and your stomach is always hurting because you're trying to transition, you're trying to get used to the new job. But, and like I said, not saying that this is going to be a symptom that it's across the board for everyone. Everyone experiences things differently in their own body, that experiences every emotion differently, and it manifests differently in their own bodies. So, and that's why tonight, Ella, when you were asking, like, well, how do I even say that? How would I even be able to, express that to the doctor of what I'm feeling? That's why we keep having these conversations, because this is why, like, even for tonight, for Scarlett's conversation tonight, she's giving us practical ways that we can first, before you can even talk about it, can we even identify it? Do we even know what that is, right? And that's what Scarlett is going to go through tonight, is she's going to break it down for us to where we understand. She's going to give us the tools to be able to have even the language to express what it is that we are feeling emotionally. Because most of the time we don't have the language. If you were in our conversation last time, in that short video where our elders are asked, like, when you think about, mental health or all this, like, what comes to us, like, well, we don't even have the words in our own native language to even talk about that, right? So that's why for tonight, like, Scarlett's basic thing is like, we just want to give you like verbiage. We want to give you some words to be able to express those things, and also to be able to help you understand what it is that you're feeling. So go ahead, Scarlett.
No, that's good. I thought of the example when we had this conversation, like with our Samoan elders, and one of them saying they were angry, and I said, well, if we actually took anger out, what's underneath that? And they're able to identify it, because no one has helped them break it down or given them the words. It's like, what is it? Are you sad? Were you dismissed? Were you not heard? Did you feel lonely? Like, let's give that a voice rather than just the anger. So, Celia, I saw you had your hand up. I want to make sure I get to you.
No. I think you can continue. I mean, I had a question similar, but I feel like you might get there. Well, a lot of it was just conditioning, right? It's but how do you undo like cultural conditioning, right? Because I just remember that, as a kid, you couldn't have feelings, right? You're conditioned to finish crying so that, that person can feel better about the discipline that they did to you. But we were conditioned not to have feelings. We were conditioned to, suck it up, wipe it away, push it down, on to the next thing.
Well, I think that's why, because what I always talk about is, if our parents actually knew how to teach us about feelings, just like they taught us how to cook, how to clean, how to work hard, how to do academics, whatever they taught you before, they would actually teach us about feelings too. So where I see, this is where grace comes in for my parents in particular, is to where I say, well, you know what? If they would have known differently, I know they wouldn't have taught me. They wouldn't have kept it to themselves. Mm-hmm. So that's why when Sal and that's why we were very, very tactical. We got to reach out to our elders, because when we give them the language, it's a different conversation that you are having with them. The unfortunate thing is the generation before us, our parents, it was very survival thinking, because how they grew up. That's what their parents told them. So they're only doing what they know. Where I'm at, I'm able to teach my son differently because I know differently now. I still do what I need to do as far as to get him to where, like, a lot of the discipline stuff, not all of it, I use what works. And I teach him about feelings and emotions too, because I have that language now. I have the tools now. But if I know if the generation before us had that, they would have given it that to us as well.
Yeah. But in addition to that too, with what Scarlett said, Silly, is, when you're saying like, how can we undo all of these, if we were preconditioned to, the thing is, like, our brains are just so beautiful in the sense that it has the ability to learn and unlearn things, right? So whatever it is that we have maybe even learned that, like, we feel like, oh, this is not a, this wasn't, maybe like a good way, or maybe it's like a maladaptive way of, like, using or teaching, my kids, then guess what? I'm going to try and learn something new so that I can be able to teach my kids something different. But that's the beauty of our brains, is we are able to do that. So nothing is really sort of like set in stone. Doesn't matter like what it is your experience is, right? Because we, when you say like, we've been preconditioned, like, yes, this is like strong things from our culture, like strongly embedded in us. But at the same time, our brains have the ability to be able to learn new things and then also apply new things as we continue to grow and evolve.
Yeah, because the thing about it is, with the survivalistic thinking, it was either or. What we are talking about is how can we do whatever it is we need to do to discipline, to help, culture our kids, or navigate, and add on to this part, like how can we talk about feelings as well, because it doesn't have to be either or, it can be an and. How can we include all of it? Go ahead, Celie.
The question is coming from Lika Smith from the PI Health Board. Yes, the inner wellness show, the ones you're focusing on, it's information about immigrants being able to access insurance during open enrollment. But I think that I think she just wanted to add on, is that the inner wellness show, the ones you're focusing on?
I'm a bit focusing on what in particularly, because I'm a bit lost.
This is not a question. She said it's information about immigrants being able to access insurance during open enrollment.
Gotcha.
This
Thanks,
is Sylvia.
Lika. Thanks, Auntie Sylvia. I
I'm just
appreciate
relaying.
that. Oh.
You carry on.
Oh, for those who are watching, open enrollment is open. Okay. So the question still remains: how are feelings for you culturally? We've kind of been talking about it, and in your family, what would happen if you share? So I will share how feelings were viewed for me as I was growing up. Even though I grew up in the States, it was a very, very, still a typical Samoan household that I grew up in. One of the things that I learned was that it was actually okay for men to share feelings in regards more of the negative feelings, and that as a woman, I wasn't allowed to, because if I showed the same feelings, it was an issue. And so what I learned subconsciously was that, oh, I don't think I'm allowed to share. I don't think I'm allowed to have feelings, because if I did share, it was met with a lot of turmoil, put it like that. So that's a nice way to put it. So that was, unfortunately, it took me, how you see me talking about feelings now, it took me years to work on that, to like what Sala was saying, to undo that message that I was telling myself, that, oh, my feelings don't matter. I shouldn't talk. Women aren't allowed to talk about their feelings because the men in my family, their feelings are more important than mine. So it took me years, and even going to therapy, to undo that message, and that to recognize how important me sharing my feelings was for the benefit of me. So that's how, for me, how feelings were displayed for me as I was growing up. Solid, you want to add a thing? Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, if nobody's gonna share, but I want to share a feedback from when we ran this conversation in the past, and one of the feedbacks we got was, I think it was within a Samoan culture. So I'm curious to hear what other, like, if you're from a different culture, I hope we get to hear your feedback on this, but I think I remember someone from our previous community conversation sharing from perspective of Samoan culture with this and saying their experience was growing up, kids, like as a kid, it was almost like considered disrespectful if you told your parents or shared how you felt with adults. That would be considered disrespectful. So and of course no kid wants to be disrespectful. So what are they going to do? They're not going to share their feelings, right? Because then it's maybe they tried to share it the first time and then it was sort of shut down immediately and kind of been told like, you don't know anything, you're a kid, or just any kind of minimizing and dismissive way. So their experience was, it just in their culture growing up, it was that kids almost like didn't have a voice. So it was considered almost disrespectful. But I'm curious to hear if you're from a different culture, if that was maybe your experience as well.
And while you all think, I remember that that conversation, because I remember one of the things I said is that we actually have to actually truly define what disrespect is. Because a lot of times, and it's so interesting especially in the context of our Samoan culture, it's like they'll ask, hey, what's wrong? Then you share, you got in trouble. And I'm like, wait, you just asked me what's wrong. And so, but it was labeled as disrespect, but when we actually pull back the layer of it, it's not disrespect. And so we have to truly define what respect is and what disrespect is, because a lot of times when we identify, like people have challenges are defining what respect and disrespect is. They just know examples of what it looks like and what it shouldn't look like.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sal. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I thought about another one feedback too from I think our previous community conversations too, where they were saying something along the lines of if they shared their feelings, then oh my gosh, I'm losing it. What was it that they said? Celie, share your answer while it's coming back to my brain right now.
Are you talking about what I put in the chat?
Yeah.
I was just plus oneing you, right? So it was just relative to a similar example of, if you don't share it out loud, you just stuff it deep down and it festers. And then it builds and it builds and someone pops it later. I think there is actually a question in the Facebook chat box from the Tongan Community Resource Center of Washington.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
I came back. Okay, hold off on that.
Okay,
Celia.
yep,
Just came back.
right
All
on.
right.
You got it.
Just remembered. Oh, tonight's the night. So I remember one time I remember sharing that with one of my clients, or what I get a lot too from parents is, or not parents, teenagers, is when they come into therapy and we're sitting across from them, but then they're sharing with me how once they started sharing how they felt with their parents, what they get or how they end up feeling is guilty. And that was because their parents would say, well, why are you depressed? Why are you sad? You have a roof over your head. I buy you whatever you want. You're not like those kids whose parents are not there for them, so they don't understand. So parents don't understand why their kids are feeling sad, why their kids are feeling depressed, why their kids are feeling any kind of way, right? And then that would be sort of their response to their kids is, I don't understand why you would feel sad. You have a roof over your head. I buy you whatever you want. You have food on the table every single day. So meeting all of those basic needs, and parents are like, why are you sad? Why are you experiencing these negative things? Like, you don't have any trauma right now, kind of response. So that came up, and I wanted to share that, Scarlett.
Good. No, okay, Celie, thanks for sharing that. Celie, what was the question?
Oh, no. There was a question in the chat box from the Resource Center of Tonga.
Tongan community.
Go ahead, Auntie Sylvia.
Yeah, they were just asking to if you could just, I know you probably already talked about it, but they missed it. The feelings and culture. How are feelings viewed culturally and in your family?
Mhm. Yeah, I just shared an example, like for me, because everybody has a different experience. And even though ethnically we are probably a lot very similar, our culture, but for me in particular, growing up, sharing my feelings uh, got me in trouble, caused turmoil. And it was the message that I got was like only the men in my family were allowed to share feelings. And if I did the same thing that they did, it got me in trouble. So that's how, for me, how feelings culturally for me, that's how it was growing up in a Samoan household. That's how it was for me in particular. Now, for somebody else who's of Samoan descent or Tongan or Fijian, Tukalauan, they may have a different experience. It's just this what I'm talking about. This is what just happened with me, because it's always interesting to hear everyone's different perspective about how feelings were viewed culturally for them, because everybody's experience is different. Some of it's very generalized and can be the same, but still, when we get down to the details of it, it's still a different experience. Good? Anybody else?
I have my own question. This is Sylvia Aho again from Voice of South Pacific. What will be a solution for this?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Oh,
We will
okay.
get
I
to
think
that.
that's what our people
Yeah.
yeah, in Tonga
Mhm.
hai tala noa koe ni whikau ake mo whiongo e te ngahi ongo whikau aki pa mo ngai unganga whafonua ka koe nuk tala mai e toki whamatala mai ai ngahi tari ko ia ke whonga koe ke solova ake ngai palapalema koe ni. Malo.
I don't know what that. Okay. Vicky, I saw you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes. I think also part of this is also from generations after generations, really having a conversation with your loved ones, whether it's your mom, your children, for this generation, for my children and grandchildren. It's like we really haven't had like this actual conversation, like what we're doing right now, like the feelings, and how are, even we ask, like, how are you doing today, you know oh, we had a great day in school. But how far, like, how, why is it a good day in school? Like, we don't extend the conversation to a point where, okay, they're really feeling because they met a new friend, or something that really inspired and touched them. So sometimes our conversation with our relationships with whoever it may be is not extended enough to really have a deep conversation with the ones that you who want to connect with you.
For
So
sure.
even for me, as I was growing up with with a single mom, and she was always on the go, and working, trying to make sure that we have a roof over our head, blah blah blah. But it was
Mhm.
more like, oh, how's your day? Or like, the conversation was not into a point where mental health or any kind of health, emotional issues was to the extension where you can't really express yourself.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's, we're all cut short, and that happens generation after generation. Now my question here is, like, within the school education system, how far does our even like this conversation that we're having is in our education system to even like, because we have a lot of youth who are going up through a lot of things. And so maybe that's some things that we need to work on with our education system to help explore the more of the feelings of of the children who are going through trauma, or who wants to share their feelings, but it can't be expressed because the conversation is either not happening or either is cut short. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. That's a great question. And so I'll just say from the last, because it's been about a couple of years since I worked in the school system in Washington State. Social emotional learning, truly, from what I've seen, just even me being growing up, it's not really taught like after first or second grade. And so it's very, and I actually have talked to a school system, it was a middle school in Washington State, actually, like, where I encouraged them to, it was because it was a middle school I worked at, encouraged them to create a social emotional group, so that we can talk with kids about actually what's all these feelings that you're feeling, because it's very important that we teach our kids what the words are, what's going on. One of the things that Saul and I have done, we actually worked with a couple of teen groups, and we have taught them about feelings, the importance of feelings and emotions, and sharing who's emotionally safe, what's your definition of trust, what's your definition of love. It's those in-depth conversations that's very important. And so and I think Auntie Sylvia brought up a great point. I think in one of our previous 2 classes is like, how do we talk to the parents? And so that's one of the things that Saul and I are working on as well, how to teach these classes to our parents as well. Hopefully that answers that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I just want to elaborate the way my childhood is, and it's kind of like generation after generation, the way that how we to talk to, whether it's our children or even, because this, when we share our feelings is that we care about someone. You want to build a relationship to whoever it may be. And that's when you want to trust that person. And so that you can also share, what you're feeling. And so that's why sometimes even with, our loved ones, our relatives, it's sometimes, yeah, it gets cut short to the point where we're not really expressing the way we actually feel. So thank you so much. And also with the school systems, I'm just hoping we can do better. I'll just say that. Thank you.
And thanks for that, Vicky, because like even when Salah had said a little bit ago about like how parents or the older generation will look at someone sharing their feelings as disrespectful. So, and I just remember one of the things I talked about with the parents, I go, is it disrespectful or are you uncomfortable? I'm like, and they were like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. I said, yeah, let's actually figure out the words instead of just using just the words just to use it. Because let's actually figure out the feeling that we're feeling. And they were highly uncomfortable because they didn't know about their own feelings. All these classes that Saul and I are community conversations that Saul and I are having with our communities is really about how you yourself can continue to improve for the betterment of you, so that whoever you come in contact with can so that you can show up better for yourself, so that you can show up better in those other spaces too. Because what I know is when you start doing differently for yourself, people start to pay attention. They're like, oh man, what's Vicky doing differently? Like, hey, and then they'll ask you sometimes. It's a trickle effect that occurs. So great question, Vicky. Thank you for that. Sal, anything you wanted to add before I move forward? Or are you good?
No, but we'll go with Cindy has a question in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
Oh, sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to contribute to Nikki mentioned about a generation gap. Like because like I was born in Asian country, so it's even more harder for me as a kid to talk with my parent because like I know that my parents used to pass through like a hard time with their mental health, but they just don't realize about that. And they think that like the kid nowadays, when I told them that, oh, I'm so stressful about work, about my school, but like they gonna like ask me back like, why you need to be like depressed about that? You know, like I'm as a as your dad, as your mom, I'm supposed to be more trustful than you because I need to go work and now how to like support for the family. They just don't really understand our feeling and like in Asian culture in general, I noticed that like we not really have a deep talk or like if we mention about like health, mental health problem, they gonna like Asian parent in general gonna think like their kid is just overthinking and they don't really encourage their kid to go to see therapists because like they consider that as a disease like that.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that, Cindy. And so one of the things that we talked about in our cultural stigma class last week was that navigating cultural stigmas in mental health. One of the things I remember that was talked about in there is that a lot of times with our parents, one, they don't really understand in regards to mental health because that's still new information for them. Two, they because they're unaware. They're just like, they don't want to see their kids hurt. So they try to go to solution mode very quickly. We don't need that. Just go do this. Just go for a walk. And it's more than that. So it's that education piece. And so I would say, and particularly for me, with when I remember I started sharing my feelings little with my parents. And what I noticed was they actually started sharing more about how they were feeling. And it wasn't because I told them they had to do it. It's because they saw the example in me. And so sometimes that's just kind of what happens, is that we are the example for our parents, because they just don't know it about it. Now, sometimes they just don't. Unfortunately, some parents just don't want to do differently. And there's nothing that you can truly do about it. But again, our focus on is to make sure that you are doing what's best for you so that you can have a different outcome for you. Solid, anything? We good? Cool. All right. Feelings, culture. It's not a weakness. Okay. I know we always say, man, you weak, you sharing your feelings, you crying. It's not a weakness. It's not. It is an absolute strength and bravery when you decide that you want to share your feelings with somebody. It is so, I compliment every person who I see in my office when they share with me what's going on. And I always talk about, I appreciate how you shared with me. I appreciate your bravery. It is just so important. And so even when we talk about crying, the reason it's important for you, there are so many benefits to crying. One, it lessens the pain of what's going on. It provides a release. It releases stress. And then it can improve and strengthen your immune system. Like those, the significance, the importance of crying. So, because a lot of times when we have these ideas of like, sharing your feelings is weak, it's why you doing that, crying, man, what's wrong with you? Because I ain't gonna front, I've heard, because it's been said to me before when I cried, I'd be like, man, what's wrong with you, fool? And I'm like, hold up. Like, don't do that. But one of the things I asked in like this last question was, who came up with this idea that it has to be weak? What's the reason that we continue it? And a lot of times we continue things because and it doesn't serve us. So it's like, that's why I sit and I sit with my clients and I sit in these community conversations, really sit and think about what is the reason I continue something that doesn't work for me. And if it doesn't work, what do I want to do differently? How do I do that? Doesn't mean you jump off. It's like, what's that one small step that I can do so that I can have a different outcome for me? Now, if somebody else adds on to it and gets better along with me, great. But this is all about how you can truly take care of what's going on inside of you. Sala, anything you wanted to add? You're muted.
I said I always like this piece as well. And I think when it comes to viewing feelings as either positive or negative, like, or weakness versus strength, right? It's such a, it's almost like we're limiting ourselves to like, it's, like this black and white type of thinking, where it's either this or this, right? But truly, like, I remember one of our other community conversations where we do have a video also where it does talk about things, or was it this one? Where it just says, it's this one, where it's just, I would say, and you'll see, everyone will see this video later on, so I won't spoil it for everyone, but I see our feelings as like just little notifications. And that's what I always say. They're like, whenever you get little notifications on your phone and it's letting you know that someone just sent you an email. It's letting you know, hey, pay attention, because, this, someone just, whatever it is, notification that comes up on your phone, your alarm is going off. That's just what feelings are. But we have such a hesitancy to sit in them, or to, just to get to know it a little bit more, even identify it for whatever reason. But really what our feelings are, just these little notifications that our bodies is telling us, like, hey, you need to pay attention here. Or your feelings at what sometimes would be like, hey, I didn't like how this person talked to you. I feel some type of way about it. That wasn't right. Like they shouldn't talk to you in that way. So maybe you feel irritated about this person. And that's all there is to it. Like it's just like these little notifications that's letting you know, hey, something doesn't quite sit well with you over here. Pay attention over here. But that's how I would see feelings as well. But like, not how like this our society kind of perceives as like weakness or strength. That's such a black and white type of thinking, right? It's either this or this, when it's truly like feelings are just needs a little bit of airing.
Mhm. So that's good. In the chat, couple of comments. So it's not a weakness now, but man, back in the day was considered it exactly like crying. Another one said, sharing your emotions puts you in such a vulnerable place. To be able to do that takes much courage and strength. Absolutely. Another individual said, I also keep silent on my stress before, since my family will not talk deeply about emotion or any life story. So I get overwhelmed one day, it will hurt people around me and myself too. Oh
Yeah.
man, thanks for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, you have a question?
Oh, hi. I was wondering if you all can hear me because just
Yes.
having some technical issues. Okay, well, thank you. This is my first time joining. I reached out to Scarlett on
Hi.
Insta and it's really exciting. So thank you. But it's actually the first time hearing that you compliment people for actually sharing their feelings. Like I felt like it was like it's like the first time for me hearing it because obviously as Samoans it's considered weakness when people cry, especially when the eldest cries, because I'm an eldest and like crying, like you'll hear all sorts of things where you're weak. You're not supposed to cry because all of your little siblings look up to you. You're not supposed to cry here because if they see that you do, it's gonna be like it's gonna make it okay for them to show emotions. And like I don't like so I think my question is like how do we get it out in a way that it's supposed to be strength and not weakness? Because I feel like in our households crying is weakness, nothing else. Like there's just no strength in there. It's always just weakness. And if I'm supposed to survive here, like if I'm supposed to cry, just couldn't handle it, how am I supposed to like show it in a way that it's strength instead of weakness, if that
Well,
makes sense?
no, it does, and thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. I'm glad you're here. So, I think one of the things that, because I've met with Samoan families and they've said that they said, crying is a weakness. You're not supposed to do that. And so I asked them. I said, because that's the message that you got. I said, but are you just uncomfortable with seeing someone hurt? And they was like, mine was blown. They were like, oh. Yeah, I don't want my kid to hurt. So I just want them to stop crying. And so it's just like, because of course we just continue to repeat the messages that we get. And so it is an interesting conversation to have with our parents about crying. I mean, because even now when I would say when my child has cried in front of my old school Samoan father, I had to say, it's okay if you're uncomfortable, Dad. And he was like, oh, I didn't even look about it like that. And he was just like, I said, yeah, I said, he just needs to release what's going on with him, and then we'll have a conversation about it. And he was just like, oh man. So it's me showing them that it can be done a different way. And I think what you're referring to is like what we talked a little bit about earlier. It was like, it's a very survival thinking that happens in a lot of our Samoan households, because they're not given different information. Just like you said, I've never heard about somebody being brave for talking about their feelings, because that's not the conversations that we grew up with. So here we are. That's why Sal and I find these conversations very important, to like, let's change the conversation and look at it a different way. So hopefully that answers a little bit. And Sal, if you want to add something onto there, please do that as well.
No, just reiterating what you said about survivalistic thinking, right? And exactly, I have similar experiences with you as well, Elizabeth. And I mean, we see it now still in our funerals, right? When we hear "Se famalosi," which means be strong, like don't cry, it's famalosi. You hear that a lot when we're comforting people. right? So when we're comforting people and, you know, you hear, you know, our family members saying, you know, be strong, you know, it's okay. But when it's like really true, like it's okay if we cry and we let it out there. But like Scarlett said, I think like it goes back to what that video was talking about and explaining like how our brain works. So we're constantly wired to kind of look for those rewards and those threats, right? So in a situation where something is hurting you, where you are hurt, you are feeling hurt, your body perceives that as a threat, like, ooh, this is painful. This is too painful. So guess what my brain is going to do? My brain is going to try and lessen that pain that I am feeling immediately. And I can do that by coping in this way of like, all right, if I just like push down how I'm feeling right now and get through this and power through, then I'm going to be okay. What is that? Your brain is trying to cope. Your brain is trying to help you not like, you know, experience the pain that you are experiencing in that moment, right? And so again, that goes back to what Scarlett was saying as far as like being, you know, in this survival mode, you know, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. I think we even talk about it in this conversation. So your brain goes, I know, right? I was just like, is it this one or is it the next one? I'm like, all right. So, but yeah, so this is, and I think like just being able to even understand that, like, so then now we're able to, because now you're like, well, how do I even be able to express that? Which Scarlett is going to go over in the rest of the slides. But just being able to even understand what is going on in your brain and what is going on and how that ties in with how people around you are even responding. So there's the cultural piece that you have to consider of like how we're just kind of surviving and pushing through. Because if you realize, you know, in like, say, for example, in the Samoan community, right, we go from almost one funeral to another, to another, to another. And before we even get to fully mourn even one family member that passed away, we're already like maybe a month, you know, preparing for like maybe another extended family members from us. And the thing is, like, have we really had the time to even mourn, you know, all of these people that we just have all of these compounded things happen to us, and we're just kind of powering through, you know, kind of like, oh yeah, you know, be, you know, like be strong, push through. It's like that's probably what we're doing to kind of cope with it in a moment, but at some point we still need that that time to be able to express ourselves, express our emotions, and what that looks like, which Scarlett will go through in tonight's conversation.
For sure. In the chat, it said if you cried, you were laughed at, especially in front of your friends because of their uncomfortability. Yep, you're right. So you're welcome, Elizabeth. Celie, go ahead with your question.
Oh yeah, no. I just, as we were still on this topic, we had a really good question in the Facebook chat that we just didn't want to miss, and we wanted to throw your way.
Go ahead. Do you have the?
Oh yeah, no, Auntie Sylvia wanted to ask it.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was just like from Mario Cautaiterilo. Would you say the reason discussing our feelings are suppressed is because of Christian practices of sharing? And then also he said culturally, behavioral health, and then he said agreed, and also stigma.
And that's because of Christian practice of shaming.
Yes.
So I'm going to say this. There's so much cultural context that goes into that, which I would say, if we're talking about the Christian context, I think it depends in the house you grew up in, because I don't want to generalize it,
Right.
because that's not true. And so I want to be very mindful and careful, because that's why I said everybody's experience is different. And so if in your household, that's what you experience from that lens, then that's a different conversation that we have to have as well. And it's part of this. It's part of this. Solid, you want to add anything to that?
No, that's absolutely. I was gonna say the same thing as far as like, you know, how the reason why people suppress however they're feeling, whether it's just maybe how they are perceiving their situation. So how they are perceiving the world, how they are even experiencing, you know, things that's happening to them in the world, right? So remember, so even with that question, it just goes back to if that person is suppressing something because, you know, of shame, pain, or whatever, maybe because they're perceiving like this is not a safe space for me to share this. So they feel like they perceive it as like, okay, this space or this situation feels like a threat. Remember, our brains are kind of tuning into rewards, things that's making us happy, and then threats, right? Things that are like maybe trying to harm us. So if this person is that's asking the question, if you're saying like within your context, if this person is like suppressing how they're feeling, and like I said, it could be that they are perceiving whatever situation that they're in, whether Christian or otherwise, you know, and remember, that's just your perception, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's everybody else's perception. So it could be that how you are perceiving what's going on and how you are taking that into yourself, right, is the reason why you're like, okay, all right, I'm feeling, it doesn't feel safe. So therefore I'm gonna like push all of these things down because apparently it's not safe for me to bring this out.
Mhm. And so so that goes into that, just our last bullet point. When you suppress, and you have to think about what the cost of is staying silent. Like, how is that affecting you? So this is a question I always ask individuals I come across. I go, okay, if you stay silent and not share what's going on with you, what's the cost of that for you? Because a lot of times it's a severe cost. So
Great questions tonight. Let's go. We love it. We love it.
Exactly.
Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Keep them coming, keep them sharing. So why are feelings important to share? One, because research reveals talking about your feelings actually reduces its intensity and provides relief. Because we always give an airing to our happy feelings, our excited feelings. Because imagine if you kept that inside. Like, if you think about, man, if I kept this happy feeling inside, how does that make me feel? It's like you have to let it out. It's the same thing for negative feelings. The more you keep it in, it's this buildup, like we talked about a little bit earlier. But if you actually talked about it, it actually gives you a relief and reduces the intensity of it. Next is, it helps you and others understand you better. When you are unable to identify what's going on with you, the expectation for someone else to understand it's not going to happen. So that's why we have to figure out what the words are of what's going on. In the summary that Sala put in the chat tonight, there is a feelings wheel that I put in there because I want us to use it. Okay, so because it's important. Vicky, go ahead.
Okay, I think even you want to share your feelings, I think the person who you're going to talk to has to have that open ear to pause for a minute, to listen, to understand what you're trying to express. Because sometimes, like I said, we get cut short, whether the person that you're talking to just, you know, interrupts the way how you express yourselves, and then they lose that connection of rebuilding or wanting to express their feelings. So I think we, as as a community or as a family or whoever, needs to learn more about the understanding, to shut your mouth a little bit so you can hear what this person is trying to tell you or express themselves. And I think that a lot of people need to work on that, to have that open ear and make sure that you have that other person trying to express how they're feelings, because sometimes that's what happens, is you're not gonna be able to express how you're feeling if someone is just talking back to you and not giving you that chance to even share your actual feelings. So thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. Yep, because we're gonna talk about that when we share our tips. So thank you for bringing that up. You guys are just jumping ahead, and I love it. I do. But again, it helps you understand you, because a lot of times we don't take the time to think about what's going on with us. So again, everything that we teach, we're talking about, we're really teaching about self-awareness. It's important to continue to do self-awareness. The other part why it's important to share your feelings, like, it recognizes that you're not alone. Because I can't tell you how many times I've sat and be like, man, ain't nobody feeling me like this, like what else I'm feeling. But actually, when I aired it and shared it with somebody, I'm like, oh man, I didn't know they experienced that. So again, it makes you recognize that you're not alone. And then lastly, they don't disappear if you don't talk about them. It's like what Sala said a little bit ago. It's like it compounds. So in the therapy world, we call it compounding. And so again, it just builds up and builds up. So the example I always give is if you keep not talking about what's going on with you, like not sharing your feelings or whatever it is, one day, if you keep stuffing it back in your emotional closet, one day the closet door is not going to close. And because it's reached its capacity, because that's why it's important to air those things out. So 34,000. There's a psychologist by the name of Robert Plutchik, and his theory on emotions. And the study shows that you may experience up to a combination of 34,000 feelings. And he broke it down into 27 classifications. And so when people tell me, man, I don't know how I'm feeling, I believe you, because there's so many feelings. Because when you look at the feelings wheel, and my clients always get surprised, man, that's a lot of feelings. I said, yeah, those are all the things you can experience all at once. And so I want you to know that you're not alone when you say, I don't know how I'm feeling. And so I'm really big on, you gotta give yourself grace in the midst of this, because again, you're learning and you're allowed to mess up. You're allowed to not know, and you got to give yourself time to figure it out. So when somebody tells me, hey, I don't know how I'm feeling, I said, well, sit with it and let's chat about it. I said, we ain't got to rush. It's just like, let's give it a space. Let's give it some air. Sala, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I just, every time I see this number 34,000, I'm like, dang, and our people are just struggling, just trying to find language for one feeling word. So it's like we're like, there's like so much more layers that I think like, people of color had to kind of like push through, even when it comes to things like this, like talking about our feelings, something that's not really talked about in our cultures. So when they say like 34,000 feelings, I'm like, gosh, like we, for anyone, I think that, 2 languages or more, I feel like it's, it's even difficult, because especially like, does your native language even have words to even, explain what these feelings are? And that's what trips people up a lot, because then it's like, I'm sitting with all of these, things that I'm feeling emotionally, but I can't even put words to it. And the thing is, like, if we can't put words to it, we can't even identify it, then how do we target it? How do we find a way to address them if we don't know? So we totally understand when, people are sitting across from us and they're just kind of like, yeah, I don't know how you feel. I don't know how I feel. And which is why the feelings wheel that Scarlett always shares and always talks about is like this basic like tool, that's something that's tangible that you can look at and be able to like, let's just start here with these. I know there's 34,000, feelings out there, but let's just start with these ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So someone in the chat said, I love that. Give yourself grace. And the reason why we always emphasize that, because we give grace to everybody else but ourselves. Okay. So it's important to, and we talked about last time in our classes, you have to take care of home. Home is you. Home is everything inside of you. You got to take care of home. And so that's that big part of giving yourself grace, because when it comes to feeling, especially when you're just learning, it is going to take time, and it's okay. It's absolutely okay. So with that being said, I'm going to share, this is the video that Sala was referring to earlier, and it's going to talk about why it's important, why we need to feel heard.
One of our deepest longings, deeper than we even perhaps recognize day to day, is that other people should acknowledge certain of our feelings. We want that at key moments our sufferings should be understood, our anxieties noticed, and our sadness lent legitimacy. We don't want others necessarily to agree with all our feelings, but what we crave is that they at least validate them. When we are furious, we want another person to say, I can see that you've been driven to distraction. It must feel very chaotic for you inside right now. When we're sad, we want someone to say, I know you're unusually down, and I understand the reasons why. And when we can't take it all anymore, we want someone gently to utter, "It's been too much for you, hasn't it? I recognize that so well. Of course it has." It all sounds desperately simple, and in a way it is. And yet how little of this emotional nectar of acknowledgement we ever in fact receive or gift to one another. The habit of not having one's feelings properly acknowledged begins in childhood. Parents, even the most loving ones, frequently stumble in this domain. It's not that they don't theoretically care intensely for their children. It's that they don't appreciate that true care involves regularly reflecting a child's moods back to him or her, rather than subtly pushing the moods away or denying that they exist. Here are some typical unacknowledging parent-child exchanges. "I'm feeling sad." "Don't be silly, you can't be. It's the holidays." "I'm really worried." "Darling, now that's ridiculous. There's just nothing to be scared of here." "I wish there wasn't any school ever. Don't be so silly. You know we have to leave the house by 8 o'clock in the morning." How different things might go, and what a different sort of adult the child would have a chance to grow into if such dialogues were only slightly tweaked. If, for example, the parent could say, "It's weird, isn't it, how it's possible to be sad at the oddest of times, even on a lovely beach holiday?" Or, "I can see you're scared. That wind really is fierce out there." Or, "It must be really horrible having double maths all morning, especially after such a nice weekend." There is one big reason why we don't acknowledge as we might: fear. The feelings we push away are all in some shape or other emotionally inconvenient or troubling or upsetting. We love our child so much we don't want to imagine that they might be sad or worried, lost or having a terribly difficult time at school. Furthermore, we may operate with a background view that acknowledging a difficult feeling will make it far worse than it actually is. It will mean fostering it unduly or giving way to it entirely. We fear that if we give a bit of unbiased mirroring to our child, we might be encouraging them to grow cataclysmically depressive, unfeasibly timid, or manically resistant to authority. What we're missing is that most of us, once we've been heard, become far less rather than far more inclined to insist on the feelings we're beset by. The angry person gets less rather than more enraged once the depth of their frustration has been recognized. The rebellious child grows more, not less inclined to buckle down and do their homework once their feelings that they want to burn the school down, break the headmaster's glasses, and abscond to a desert island have been listened to and identified with for maybe no more than 55 seconds. Feelings get less strong, not more tyrannous, as soon as they've been given an airing. We become bullies when no one's listened, never because they've listened too much. The problem of unacknowledged feelings doesn't sadly end with childhood. Couples routinely put each other through the same mill. For example, "Sometimes I feel that you don't listen." "That has to be rubbish. I put so much work into this relationship. I'm worried I might be fired." "That's not possible. You work so hard." All the way to the divorce courts or an affair. The good news is that an enormous uplift in mood is available right now with very little effort, if we simply learn to change the way that we typically respond to the I statements of those who matter to us. We only need to play their feelings back to them, even the potentially awkward feelings, for a few moments using certain magical phrases. "I can hear that you must be feeling so. I can understand completely that." Such phrases can change the course of lives. Crucially, we don't need to be listened to by everyone. We can bear an awful lot of unacknowledged feelings when just a few people, some of them in our childhood, and ideally one of them now in our bedroom and another in our friendship circle, every now and then plays us back to us.
So due to time's sake, I'm going to cut that video a bit short. So again, the importance of us sharing our feelings is the importance of feeling heard, because like we said a little bit earlier, it reduces the intensity of it and it provides relief. One of the things when we always talk about feelings, we always want to talk about the layers of feelings. So this is how I teach it to my clients. and that we can experience more than one feeling at one time. So I always break it down in these categories. There's the surface, the middle part, and the root. The root feeling is the most important one to identify, because it's that root feeling, that's how we really feel of what's going on with us. So for example, a lot of times we show when somebody is angry, I say, okay, for us in the field that Stala and I do, anger is in a secondary emotion, and we talk about that more in our next class. And so I always say, what's underneath that? So I'm going to give an examples of the layers of feelings in regards to me. So when I've experienced anger, that surface feeling in the past, in the middle, I felt annoyed and frustrated. The root of that was because I was hurt and felt dismissed. So if I actually identify, hey, when you did that actually hurt my feelings and I felt dismissed, it's a different conversation than for me when I get to the surface of anger, because now I can't even think straight. There's something, there's more physical things that happen to me that I don't even want to address. So those are important to identify those layers of feelings. So for example, and just to give it on the positive end, so on the positive side, like my surface would be excited and happy. In the middle, I would feel delighted and I would feel pleased. The root feeling of that is I would feel secure and feel seen. So though it's always important, like I said, to identify, because again, you can experience up to a combination of 34,000 feelings. So again, you can feel more than one feeling at once. So this is how I break it in the simplest terms down to in these community conversations and to clients that I teach. Sala, anything you wanted to add to that?
Nope, you're good.
Good. All right. Tips. So Vicky, this is for you, my dear. So this is how what Sal and I have combined together to talk about how we can start sharing our feelings healthily. You have to identify what makes you feel emotionally safe. What tone, what language? Do you want a listening ear? Do you want encouragement? Do you need to go for a walk? Do you want softness? Do you want directiveness? Do you want someone just to listen? So you have to think about what makes me feel emotionally safe, because what makes me feel emotionally safe is not going to be the same as Sala. It's not going to be the same as Zili, Vicky, and anybody else who's here. So you have to really think about what makes me feel emotionally safe. Use a feelings wheel, please. So here's a tool that I have that I always say, the feelings wheel that is put in the event summary. I always recommend to my clients to take a picture of that wheel and save it as one of their favorites in their phone, so they can have just easy access to it. You don't have to use the one that was shared. You can actually Google and Google feelings wheel and pick one that actually works for you. So in that feelings wheel, identify your surface, middle, and root feelings. I have friends still to this day who would be like, hey, Scar, how are you feeling? And I will say to them, I said, you know what, let me look at my feelings wheel and I'll get back to you. I would literally hang up the phone, pull out my feelings wheel and pick out the feelings of what I'm feeling in the moment. So again, use a feelings wheel. The other part is identify who makes you feel emotionally safe. Who are those safe people for you? Sometimes it's not family, and it's okay. I want to encourage you to contact the people who you know are going to actually help you and help you how you need it, not help you how they feel they should help you. So again, that goes back to that first tip is identify what makes you feel emotionally safe. It may take a minute to sit and think about those things, but I would rather you think about it and identify it and be able to share it rather than just not. So again, identify who makes you feel emotionally safe. Who are those people who I know, hey, do you have a minute? I need some support and encouragement. Hey, do you have time for me to listen? Hey, I just need to vent. And you tell them what you need. So again, I go to those individuals first. Journal. I always again, the reason why I always say journaling does not mean you have to write all the time. You can video blog, you can use art, you can scribble. One of the examples that I gave, a previous client that I had before, they actually created a talk show for themselves. They would interview themselves, and that was their way of journaling. Reason why I say journaling is because you got to give whatever's going on inside of you, got to give it some space. Like I said in that video, when you're able to, when you talk about those things, it actually is relieving when you are able to air those things out. So it's very important, again, to however you want to journal or release in a healthy way, please do that. And so in the summary as well, we put a 50 ways to take a break. Utilize that. Again, I utilize that. That's how I got kite flying and cloud watching, because I utilize it. I keep a kite in my car because when it's windy, I will go to the park by myself and fly a kite, because that's the way I take a break. That's the way I'm able to help release whatever's going on inside of me. Lastly, take a break. Take a break sometimes. Sometimes our feelings are overwhelming and we got to take a break. You just got it, and it's okay. You can pick that up on at another point in time. The only reason why I say take a break is because sometimes we need that, but take a break and come back and address it. I'm not saying take a break and don't and sweep it under the rug. No, take a break, gather yourself, do whatever you need to do to help calm yourself down or whatever that is, so that you can identify all those things of what's going on, and then come back and address it to that emotionally safe person or emotionally safe group that you have. Sala, anything you wanted to add?
Just want to emphasize on the emotionally safe person, right? Because I think some of the feedback that we got from tonight, like around, because remember when the first video was talking about how our brain is always kind of looking out for those rewards and threats, right? So this is why, because whenever your brain perceives a threat, that means you don't feel safe. So this is why people sometimes will go into suppressing how they feel, because maybe one, they had an experience where they tried to express how they felt to somebody and was maybe dismissed, was maybe, not even acknowledged, or was told that it was disrespectful. So then, like whatever the experience is, so then you don't feel safe. And so now this person their brain learned that it's not safe to share my feelings. So, or even with some of the comments that was on the chat tonight, where, it's considered a weakness, because maybe when you cried as a boy, you had other kids that was like, oh, you're a girl, or, whatever. So now, once you had those experiences, your brain is like, oh, not safe, not safe, not safe. So now, instead of like just sharing it, you have learned to keep it down, to stuff it down and suppress it and suppress it and suppress it, right? So this is why this first one I wanted to emphasize on, because then it's like you have to make sure you find those emotionally safe people to be able to talk to about some of these things, right? Because maybe like when you feel that way around whatever situation you're in or with people, your body is trying to tell you like, nah, you're not safe with sharing however you're feeling or being vulnerable. Like someone shared tonight how, sharing your feelings is a vulnerable thing for people to do. So, it's not something where for some people it's not easy for them to do. So this is why we want to say like, make sure that you are finding that person that you're able to, that you feel safe with. And one of those people, if you can't find it among your friends, family, or whatnot, one of those people can be a therapist, like Scarlett and I. One of those people, because not only that, like we are bound by law. So legally, we're able to hold this space for you where nothing is leaving this therapy room. So whatever is shared in this space that we're talking about, if you were here for our what is therapy class or conversation, it's a very sacred space where we get to hear from people what they're going through, and it is a safe space, and we keep it that way. We keep it a sacred, safe space, and then we're also bound by law to be able to keep it that way as well. So just wanted to kind of emphasize on that piece only, Scarlett. Thank you.
No, that's good. And so somebody in the chat said journaling helps. Very important to discern who's your safe person. Yeah, it's like I said, and how you identify that safe person is when you identify what is safe to you. It is important for you to identify, again, what makes me feel emotionally safe. Does this person have that? And if they don't, can I ask them to be that for me in that space? So it's very, very important that you identify those things. So with that being said, that is our community conversation for tonight. Again, you can find all this information about Selenite in tonight's presentation in regards to the event summary. And for those of you who are on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, if you would like a copy of that, please put it in the chat, and so that we can send it directly to you. I appreciate these conversations and the sharing. That it's such an honor when you all share with us. It's a beautiful thing, because like I said, we are very adamant about making these private conversations public to change the better for our community, so that we can do differently for our community. Does anybody have any questions? Anything else they want to share? If so, please do so.
Yeah, I think what I would say is just, you can follow up with myself or Scarlett or Sala. I mean, we just want to honor time and, keep, I know we have another program on the radio show tonight, but I dropped in the Facebook chat box a link to just kind of a survey. I mean, this really helps us with funding and identifying how, what the impact is on community. So we really appreciate it if you can fill out that form. Both, I know there's folks here on Zoom as well. I have some of your information, so we put it in the Zoom chat and I'll email it out. But really just want to thank both of our therapists and just an amazing conversation we had tonight with community. We know community likes to talk story, and the story gets great. So, I mean, it's, again, going to bring up more potential opportunities. And I think next week is part 4 is what's underneath your anger. So, we take a deep dive of why you are what you are. But, with that, I would just, again, really like to thank Voices of the South Pacific for allowing us to use this platform and allowing us to share this with many people, right? So not only just on our Zoom chat that we have, but we're just privileged to have the opportunity just to share this information out with community. With that, I'll give Auntie Sylvia the last word.
Auntie Sylvia, before you go, for those who are in the Zoom chat, the survey that Sylvia is talking about, we just dropped the link in there. So if you could fill that out again, that truly helps us, and we love hearing you all's feedback.
We appreciate that. You get a lot of points in heaven.
Yes. Thank you both. This is a great program, and we're hoping, that we can maybe post, like a little every 15 minutes and allow, the audience, to share, because they wanted to get some answer and a solution, Yeah, but thank you. You always raised, a great program, to address, some of the difficulties and issues that we're facing in our community. And we do appreciate. Thank you. Have a great day, and we look forward for the next program. And now you can always watch it at any time on Voice of South Pacific, Facebook Live, and then also you can sit on your TV screen and watch it on YouTube at home with your family. Thank you all. Taufa soifua malo elelei o falahiyat ke kimoto.
Manuel Lepo.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sala. Thanks, Scarlett.
Micronesia, Polynesia, Melanesia. Yeah. We're ready to tune in with the Voice of South Pacific with a Tongan version.
They get right, you got a girl.
You can admit it. I found.
They got a girl, all the hero down the bayou. Hey, see if all the sweetest one me on my
Recording.
Son of a gun, we'll have big fun. No,